Hello, everyone. Welcome. We're so excited to have you here today. We're excited to introduce our panel for the state of AI in cybersecurity. My name is Patricia Elise, and I'll be your MC for the day. So just one quick note before we get started, please use the Q&A feature instead of the chat window to drop your questions to the panelists. We want to make sure that we can read the questions easily and it's easier for us to find them there. So please make sure you're using the Q&A feature. And without further ado, I would love to bring our panelists to the virtual stage. Please join me in welcoming them as they turn on their cameras and unmute their mics. Awesome. I'll hand it over to Mike. Have a great panel.
Hey, Patricia, you still got my video muted.
So we'll give Jeffrey just a second to, there we go, excellent. So thank you all for joining today. We've got an excellent panel. I'll introduce myself first, and then I'll do a round robin with our panel, let them introduce themselves. My name is Mike Green. I'm the Chief Information Security Officer for Availity, and I'll be helping with some of the questions and fielding some of the conversation between my fellow panelists. Next, I'll go over to Lian.
Yeah, hi everybody. This is Lian Yu. I come from Wells Fargo. I work in corporate risk team. I focus on the cybersecurity for the fraud models and also the login systems from Wells Fargo's website.
Thank you so much. John, if you wouldn't mind.
Hello, I'm John Bedinski. I work at General Dynamics. I am a cybersecurity systems engineer. I started out my career getting a PhD in computer science, focusing on artificial intelligence, robotics, and autonomous systems. About 6 years ago, I got lured over to the dark side of cybersecurity. And I've since then I've gotten my CISSP, my certified ethical hacker, and I'll be getting my cyber threat hunter certification this summer.
Wow, thank you so much. Great to have you. Scott, you're up next.
Hi, everybody. I'm Scott Miserendino. I'm the Vice President of Engineering at BluVector. BluVector is a cybersecurity AI-based product company, bringing some advanced network intrusion detection and automated threat hunting solutions to market as part of our parent company, Comcast NBC Universal.
Excellent. Thank you so much. And last but not least, Jeff, if you wouldn't mind.
I'm Jeffrey Moore, and I work for Dräger Medical. I'm responsible for the product security and a lot of the internal security controls for the organization. And I'm happy to be here.
It's great to have you. Thank you all to our panelists here. So if you wouldn't mind, let's put up the first question, and I'll field it to the audience here. All right, so you know, this is sort of a great startup question here. Cybersecurity and AI, a perfect match or a breakup waiting to happen? So I'll open this up to all of our panelists. What do you think? Is cybersecurity and AI, are they a good match, or is this you know, is the artificial intelligence space really breaking the old cybersecurity model?
All right, I'll jump in here. I don't think it's a perfect match yet. I don't know much about a BluVector, but up until now, I haven't actually seen any real AI out there, right? I've seen a lot of heuristic stuff and all that, and some good machine learning. Don't get me wrong, I believe it's probably out there, but I haven't. I think it's going to take a while to get in there. When I say perfect match, normally you're already matched and you're working together, but I would say it's maybe a little bit like married at first sight. You've got to grow together and figure it out when you've never met the person. I think it will have a part in any security team in the future, to be honest with you. But right now, I think it's very much trying to get an understanding of it.
I'll jump in too. You know, I'll probably fall down a little bit more on it's a really good match. between the two. I mean, I've been working at this intersection of cybersecurity and AI for almost 7 years now, and in various aspects. And I think some of the fundamental challenges within cybersecurity in terms of how quickly the threat evolves really lend itself quite well to AI applications. But to echo other panelists' last comments, it is difficult to introduce to teams, cybersecurity teams, because it is in some ways present some challenges that maybe we'll be able to get into later for kind of how they operate and what to expect. But in order to really keep pace in the future, we've got to evolve and do something different. And I think AI is a great path for that and offers a lot of benefits.
I see it as a marriage of convenience. The AI researchers are very, very happy to find somebody who can use the AI problem solvers that they are developing, and they'll jump at any problem and try to solve it. Cybersecurity, they have a lot of problems, and the big one for them, as Scott mentioned, is that the threat moves very quickly. So if you can come up with solutions that also can make decisions very quickly, that's helpful. And AI also will help reduce the number of humans that have to be involved in order to do any threat detection or protection. So those two things really will help out. But the problem is that most of the AI solutions, though they are getting into different problem areas, they still have issues of scaling up to real problems. And right now we see a lot of machine learning, primarily neural networks out there, and the main problem there is the data that you use to train up these systems. And if you don't have the data or don't know how to train the system, then you've got a lot of issues. So there's a lot of knowledge that's needed there.
Thank you.
Yeah, so I think the AI can help the financial industry to fight with the cyber fraud. So I've been working in financial industry fighting with the cyber fraud for more than 10 years. I would say that it's right now the machine learning model is quite effective, helping us to detect all those cyber attacks from outsider. Well, since this cybersecurity problem involves a lot of additional features, for example, the IP address or usernames. So with all these complicated measures, I would think that the AI technology will help to improve the current machine learning model. However, there is difficulties about the resources and the speed of those model training, because the cybersecurity area is a rapid growing area, and the cyber activities change a lot. So it's whether those AI technology can help us to improve the current machine learning model is still unknown, but we still see a lot of potentials that can use those AI technology to help to digest all the complicated additional factors in this cybersecurity area.
Well, let me pose a follow-on question. I think these were all really good answers. As we move closer and closer to using machine learning neural networks in an active basis within within the cybersecurity space, kind of how do you see the staffing model playing out, right? So, if we think about machine learning, just finding qualified machine learning staff, just finding qualified data scientists is difficult, and finding qualified and articulate cybersecurity staff is oftentimes, difficult. When we begin to marry those two roles together and require the same skill sets, what are your thoughts on really being able to staff, even if we've got the technology, being able to staff up those particular roles, someone who understands enough about the models themselves to effectively execute them and understands enough about the cybersecurity landscape to translate that into a model?
So I can jump in quickly on this one. So I came from a company that had its own data scientists, right? So we built a lot of our own anomaly detection stuff and all that. You hit on two really good points. One is the lack of qualified people out there to start with. And if BluVector does everything it says it does, the people I want above it are actually a step higher than hiring entry level people, which is becoming harder and harder. I think in the future, a lot of the AI stuff will take away a lot of the low level jobs that are out there for the SOC level 1 analysts, possibly part of the level 2 analysts. And you're going to need those level 3 and level 4 that understand the business, understand what's going on, why this website came up. Well, we know there's a marketing campaign going on that an AI would never know, right? And we've accepted the risk somewhere else that may not have actually translated into somewhere that the AI could detect that and stuff like that. I think that data scientists may become very important in security, but I think a lot of the heavy lifting will be done by the BluVectors of the world, right? They've got those people. It's harder for us to get them, and a small company won't be able to entice somebody because there's not enough data or enough information. So I think a lot of the heavy lifting will have to be done by those AI companies out there. And let's be honest, as the hackers have made it point and click attack now, right? We're going to be hoping that some of the tooling is going to be a lot simpler to bring into the environments. But you're still going to need that person to look at it and go, based on my experience, it's not the best thing.
If I could follow up on what Jeffrey said, I could not agree more with that analysis. And I've seen sort of two models when it comes to staffing within this intersection of cybersecurity and AI. One, you kind of see big companies, including Comcast, where they do build out their own data science teams. They're trying to build their own models. And they can be somewhat effective there. But in order to bring the technology to the masses, you really do need to leverage dedicated product companies that focus on this very specific application area. So you're not trying to take data scientists who may have worked a lot in natural language processing, and then you're bringing them in there and trying to do user behavioral anomaly detection. The domain expertise is really where you get tripped up sometimes in hiring data science staff. And we've found it most effective where the products can handle that level or that application of the AI, and then you leave the SOC teams to handle what they know best, is the cybersecurity aspects, understanding what's going on in their particular networks. And that does place some challenges on the product side. And that is, we've got to do a good job at explaining what these anomalous hits actually are in terms that a security analyst can understand and not a data scientist. And I think that's an area that is still challenging, but is getting better amongst the products is they're getting more and more production time in large environments and with security teams. But something that we could definitely continue to do better and strive to do better at.
Excellent, thank you. Any other thoughts on this topic, or we'll move to the next question?
I was going to add that I've been studying cybersecurity for about 6 or 7 years, and I would say that there's still so much that I have not encountered or have not learned about. And I've had a lot more years with AI background, mostly robotics and intelligent devices, and so I would say that if you're going to try to pick up somebody from one domain and teach them another, I think you would be more successful taking cybersecurity people and then getting them up to speed with neural networks. But you're going to have to make sure you're willing to pay for that speed up or that wind up, because it's not going to be a 1-week boot camp. It will be a number of years of various types of training that you would want to send them out, and or in-house training, or not man years, but I mean over a couple of years, you'd be sending someone out to a number of different training sessions, and in order to get them up to speed.
Excellent, thank you.
Yeah, I also want to add something up. Is in our team, the cybersecurity team have a couple of data scientists building the models. However, the domain knowledge, I think, is the most important part. Is as we know that the online login website has a lot of traffic, more than 10 million a day. So understanding the data and know how to aggregate and find the important features is more important than building the model. So domain knowledge is a crucial part for the cybersecurity models.
Excellent, thank you all. Let's go ahead and move on to our next question here. We'll give it just a second. So what opportunities does AI provide when it comes to cybersecurity? And I think we've already touched on this at a very high level, but let's dive a little deeper and talk about some very specific examples within some discrete domains where we think cybersecurity might actually already today or very quickly be providing, where artificial intelligence might already be providing some help in the cybersecurity space. Does anyone have any direct examples?
I'll start out with a story. I'll just give a very specific example of at least one of the things that we ran into it was a couple of years ago. And this was, around the application of machine learning, particularly sort of binary classification of files. So we were looking for malware. And doing an evaluation, we're analyzing some, because the equivalent of office documents, but these were, sort of human-produced, mostly text-based documents, but could be weaponized and often weaponized for, phishing attacks. And we had a lot of success with our models in the U.S. and across sort of a broad customer base. And we went and we had a prospect in Japan that was using it, and the models just kind of blew up on us. It kind of went nuts, and we were able to take some localized input, so some variations of these document types, feed it back through the AI model training set. And in the course of a day, and basically train out this localization problem of differences in language that our features were sensitive to that we didn't even know about. So there was some hidden bias there, but being able to do that manually would have been insane. Like if we had signatures that were tied to language-based features, I mean, that would have just been impossible to go back and filter that out. You would have just turned the whole thing off. So I do think, again, that's a very specific example of how being able to do this sort of rapid adaptation to local environments, which is something that AI is, of course, the best at, and it's the best application for it, can really provide benefit in cybersecurity. So my one little anecdote on this.
I think when I look at AI and where it could be implemented or actively being used, it's definitely in networks, right? Networks move at extreme speed, right? And the human eye can pick up things really quickly, but it can't pick up a minute blip in the environment. And this is where I see AI, machine learning, coming into play, right? This is what it's supposed to look like, and this little blip is something that we would never have seen because of the speed that things move. And you're seeing that in some other competitive products out there when we're looking at it also for network detection and intrusion tooling, right? Because it's what it's really good at, right? The human brain, I'm paying expensive people to look at really interesting things, not trying to catch something that they'll not catch, right? And you can write playbooks really well for things, but it's those outliers that you can't take into account that AI could catch. And it doesn't even have to be right. It just has to say, this looks odd, your opinion, right? And that's more important for me to saying this is odd than it being 100% right? Because I prefer it to be wrong and have somebody look at it and actually be right and make an impact business, right? So I do see some of that going on now, and I'm also looking at some of that.
Yeah, the neural network tools that are out there, they're really designed so that if you have the training data, you can quickly train the tool. And what's also of benefit is, if you have a human who's watching your network data and deciding whether or not there's abnormal activity, well, that's one human. What if you want 20 humans to be doing that? Well, at least with like a neural network, a software solution, you at least can duplicate that that knowledge. But one of the advantages of neural networks is that you can really tune it to your specific situation, and you could almost over-tune it. An example is would be like a CPA firm. If they were to go in and use data that they collected in November and train their neural network system, well, when they hit February and everyone starts sending in taxes and everyone's doing taxes, all of a sudden your network activity is very different. But now you have to worry about, how do I take that new flagged data and you want to train it back into the system? Well, then when you come around, maybe you hit the summer, well, everyone's takes off 2 months because the taxes are done. And so you could have these situations pop up like that. And as Jeffrey said, you can quickly turn around and retrain or be able to do that. But the tool that the cybersecurity company supplies to do this has to be set up to do that, because you don't want your average IT admin guy to be trying to do this. You need to have someone who knows what they're doing and a tool that makes it very, very simple to do. Otherwise, you can end up spending a lot of time, trying to push data around when you really should have it be more automated.
Yeah. I have an example in financial industry when I built the real-time transactional cyber fraud model. So as I mentioned, that for the cyber fraud model, there are additional items like the IP address, network, browsers. So all these features is for the traditional ML model, it is hard to explain these features, but with the neural networks and the NLP, so we use kind of word-to-vec or LSTM to interrupt all these new features, and this will be a good plus for the current ML model. And based on my past experiences, our model have about 30% improvement after incorporating the AI technologies for this model.
Thank you.
Yeah, I'd just like to jump onto what John said as well. The interesting thing is when COVID hit, a lot of people went to work home, and suddenly a lot of the machine learning, all that stuff, were sending a lot of erroneous messages, because suddenly they believe that all of a sudden outside world is now trying to get in, which they weren't used before because they were all inside. So there was a lot of event fatigue around trying to get the model working again, right? Once the model was working after 3-4 months, everything was back to normal. There was no problem. But we've been talking about this is when everybody comes back to work, what's going to happen then? Is it going to be the same game, right? Because it's this balance, so it's fun.
So I think it's, if I kind of summarize there, it really is the quality of the training data and the relevancy of the training data to the problem you're trying to solve in the cybersecurity space. I'm assuming that, just based on Lian's comments, John, that it's also going to be, there's also going to be some involvement in terms of determining what problem you're trying to solve. So Lian, I heard you talking quite a bit about fraud, but I think that's different, Jeffrey, than sort of your commentary around broader network intrusion detection. So, if I kind of take that forward with the training data portion, will that move us into a space where the cybersecurity organization will need to keep a lot of different training data for different training situations to feed into the machine learning platforms of the future? Will that become the new signature base, is sort of looking at what's happening on the network at the time, everyone going home, everyone coming back in, and applying the right data so that you don't have that 3-month window as the machine relearns?
I would say that it's like everything. You have multiple playbooks for different scenarios, right? And you update those playbooks regularly, right? As threat changes and things change. I think it's the same for the vendors who are doing this. They will have to keep their game up, right? And design new AI directions and neural network paths for that technology, because how end user uses a computer is not the same as how network traffic moves, and not how a web application is being used at the front end. So as they go into different areas, they're going to add layers that help us go further and further. This, when it's like this website was talked to, and then all of a sudden we saw this over here, and then they can do the correlation that we may not see due to the fact that we didn't see those differences. So I think having the same things going in, but in theory, they're going to have a lot more new things, because new things, as there's evolution of attacks change, right?
And we haven't even talked about the adversary. If an adversary gets a hold of a tool that you're using to defend your network, they're going to figure out how to get around it. And so the tool is always going to have to be improving or expanding its capabilities, shrinking down that threat surface. And so you're going to want to be able to, look at the new situation that you're going into with the threats that you have, and be able to, keep adjusting. And also your old network is always going to be changing, I would suspect. New devices, new servers, new software upgrades, and that will change the data that's running across your network. And now, you might upgrade your servers to the next version, and all of a sudden it totally changes DHCP and DNS and everything else that's flying across your network, and it's raising all sorts of flags in your detection system because it's never seen this before. It's perfectly normal, but you've now got to retrain for that new type of data.
Thank you, that's quite helpful. Let's move on to our next question. So, and I think we touched on this a little bit, but let's dive in here a bit. What challenges do organizations encounter when implementing or actively using AI for cybersecurity? And if everyone could give some examples, some specific examples, I think that'd be great.
Like everything, don't take everything. If you're going to implement technology, understand it, right? I very much talk about anything is about people. People need to understand what they're doing. AI is just written by people, and hackers are people, blah, blah, blah. But people are key. But just throwing something in the environment doesn't fix your problem, right? Make sure that you understand what you're doing in there. You configure it correctly. Work with the vendor. It's really important. Pay for that extra bit of maintenance and support from the vendor to help you get that thing working. Because if you're spending $1 million to put something in your network and you're not willing to spend all the extra $10K to help you get that working, then you've got a bigger problem in the organization. I would honestly recommend that you negotiate the price down to $990,000 and the $10K on top. But understanding what you're putting in there, what it fixes and what it doesn't, right? A lot of the AI is this catch-all, I'm going to fix everything. And there are some good vendors out there that actually really quantify what it's going to fix. But one of the questions I always ask my vendors is, what do you do extremely badly? Because that is my problem. Because you always tell me what you do amazingly well, right? So what do you do extremely badly? And I always give them the option to come back, but understand what you're putting in place, what its strengths and weaknesses, and what its liabilities are. And then you can put something in there that actually will help you, right? Your people will trust, because it's not that it's going to fix my PCI, but actually doesn't do encryption or any of the PCI stuff. So people won't trust it because they believed it would do PCI, right? So you really need to communicate and also evangelize it in the organization. Please tell people about this. This is what it's going to do. This is how it's going to help us, because it's the money for the company. It's a business enabler. That's what security is. I don't care what anybody says. I don't keep the bad guys out. I enable the business to work. Right? And that's the important thing. And AI will help me do a better job in the organization. So understand its limitations and what it does.
Anyone else with some good examples? John, I think you were going to speak.
Well, I was going to say that you know, when they were looking at some of the larger breaches that have occurred over the last few years, one thing that they discovered was that the organizations, they had the tools, but they weren't using them, or they were using them incorrectly. And it's very easy to go out and buy a bunch of tools for your IT group, but if they don't know how to use them, then they won't. And so paying for the training on the tool becomes very important. Making sure your people understand how to use it and what the results mean. A number of the breaches, they talk to the IT department, and people would say, well, oh yeah, we saw those flags come flying by all the time, but we never knew what they meant, and we had so many flags, that we had other stuff to worry about. I keep getting a phone call from so-and-so who wants me to figure out why their computer screen is upside down and stuff like that, and it's because they didn't know how to use the tool properly.
I have something to add on specifically for financial industry. So the financial industry is facing a lot of regulations. So one of the important challenge for AI model is the AI is kind of a black box model. It's hard to interpret. So for banks to implement those AI models, the model explainability is the most important part. We need to make sure that no race, gender, religion issues are involved in the model. And another aspect is the speed. As we know that the login traffic is tens of millions a day. So the model should should react very fast to the attacks. So the AI model is sometimes the implementation takes a lot of resources. So the speed is another challenge when we implement the AI model.
Excellent. I'd maybe just add a couple of additional points here and we covered this a little earlier, but really understanding your problem space and understanding whether artificial intelligence or machine learning is the right tool for that particular problem space. And then, as you dive into that, really kind of understanding, do you have the right data to support machine learning, artificial intelligence in that problem space? Can you get access to it? How up to date is it? We heard a little bit earlier that sort of relevant data for training is incredibly important. And then last but not least, Jeffrey touched on this a bit, but really evangelizing what you're going to need to make this successful in terms of training, in terms of organizational changes. If you need to hire new staff, train new staff, and making sure that you evangelize it up through leadership in terms of what problem you're solving, in a very discreet way, what problem you're solving, what problems you're not solving, and making sure that you've got sort of the organizational buy-in long-term, because this investment is a long-term investment. It is a real shift in operations as well as a mind shift thinking.
Great.
If you wouldn't mind, I'd like to add one other item that I think is really specific to some of the AI tools out there, and that is when people talk about the efficacy of models, in particular, definitely vendors will always quote you, 99% accuracy or better, but you have to really remember when you go to operationalize that, that's a great number for the data science team that built that model, right, to get it that accurate. Even if they were able to do that without overfitting, that's awesome. But when you have to evaluate 100,000 things at 99% accuracy, right, you're still getting 1,000 things wrong statistically. And the team needs to be, that has to be in their mind, right? That this isn't going to be like perfect. It's never going to have any false positives or false alarms, but rather it's going to be really good at detecting the stuff that you're not missing, or that you're probably missing. And then you're going to have to think about ways of evaluating those suspicious things that maybe aren't. And hopefully the tool is providing you, good ways of tamping down on that noise, whether it be through retraining or whitelisting, or there's a bunch of techniques that are available. But it's something that I've often found that just kind of jars teams. They're like, oh, this thing was supposed to be like super quiet, and it's not. But it was so accurate. Like, yes, it is, right? And but that's a challenge when you do this sort of statistical based detection.
But that's a good point because the thing is let's say, for an example, let's just take a rough number, 100,000, right? You may be catching 10% of the problems. If BluVector catches 50% more problems, you're still at a win. That's the problem, right? People don't understand that win, right? We all hear about efficacy right now, right? Because of J&J and Moderna. But actually, if you look at the real models, when Moderna were testing theirs and Pfizer were testing theirs with where the pandemic was and where Johnson & Johnson were in the game, it's different. The efficacy can't be married together. And it's the same thing with data. If I have really clean data, you may have 100% effective efficacy of your tool. But if my data is dirty and I don't understand what I'm doing with the data, which people keep throwing data lakes together and just not knowing what they're putting in them, you're gonna get a higher level of problems, right? And no tool is there to fix it for you because honestly, you created the problem yourself.
That's great. Thank you all. Let's put up our next question. All right, so I think we touched on this a little bit earlier as well, but let's ask it more directly. Has COVID-19 changed anything about cybersecurity? If so, does AI factor in anywhere?
Well, let's be honest, really quickly. A lot of the companies out there are trying different tools to help them do, get more productivity. So, but also at the same time, we have tools right now using AI and machine learning to actually make sure our background's in the right place, right? So there are always going to be something that's come from it. Has it changed cybersecurity? I think it's touched a change. I don't think the change is as big as Scott would want, right? But I do believe it's touching companies that may never have ever considered AI. And now going, my team is so diverse. I've now got to figure a way of getting additional data and getting this stuff validated 24/7 as well. AI doesn't get tired. 8 hours looking at a screen can tire you out. So I believe it's coming into the organizations. It's changing things, but it may not be changing it in the way of security as we know. But right now, if I took it from now, just what we're doing right now, AI is blocking out my background, which my blackboard behind me has a lot of data I wouldn't want anybody to have. So I actually have a tool that's helping me protect me right now, and it's not even relevant to a lot of the discussion, but it is protecting my security.
Thanks. Any other thoughts?
I was going to say the COVID, COVID kind of brought the issues more to the front in cybersecurity, especially the whole work from home issue. And I think that it made companies go out and look more for solutions and consider solutions that they may not have considered before. And one of them would be AI based, especially utilizing neural networks to do a screening of traffic coming through your firewall, looking for situations where you have, data that's moving out of your firewall that, could be for work from home, or it could be somebody that's compromised a computer that's work from home. And so you want to try to figure out, how to find those things. And so I think companies seeing those problems are now out looking for tools that can help with that, and looking for services or cybersecurity services that can help with that.
Yeah, I have some examples in financial industry. So COVID-19 definitely have some impact on the transactional fraud area. So especially that since COVID, a lot of in-person transactions become online transactions. This brings traffic to the bank's financial transaction, cybersecurity. And so since this behavior changes, the historical data captured by the traditional ML model could not take effect that fast to find those new trends. So the AI is helping us to capture the new trend faster and help the bank fight against this cyber fraud area faster, and helping the bank to reduce financial losses, and also help the customer to insecure their transactions and increase their customer experience.
So I'll just say, to the first question, did COVID impact cybersecurity? I think it absolutely did. I think it really challenged a series of institutional models that have been around for 20 plus years in terms of how we provide cybersecurity services and what we expect of the interactions between humans and the available technology resources. It really began to displace those resources in some pretty significant ways, and not only the internal resources, but as we think about our customers and clients and vendors, the displacement was almost universal. And I don't know that a lot of companies were really ready for that displacement. In a really large way. I'm sure plenty of folks had really good disaster recovery plans and pandemic plans, but to really see it happen worldwide almost instantaneously, I think required a lot of cybersecurity shops to really rethink their threat models, their data management models, their data security models. And I'm sure that is feeding into a lot of the conversations around AI, as Lian and others have brought up. So any other thoughts on this topic?
Yeah, I think you brought into perspective a good point, because what happened is suddenly we had to become cyber resilient, right? And that was missing from a lot of our plans in general, right? Especially from the security team, because security always believed they would be on site, right? Let's be honest, that we're always going to be on site. That's what's going to, incidents happen, we're going to be on site. This is something that changed massively, right? I've been doing incidents that I've not been anywhere near the problem, right? And there's you're having to trust a lot of people and getting images from somebody's house over a network, right? You had to become cyber resilient. And I think the pandemic impacted cybersecurity massively. It brought it to the forefront, but it also showed a lot of the weaknesses that we have, right? Just like it's shown the weaknesses in the healthcare system, in our employment system, the whole thing, but it also showed additional weaknesses that it's been nice. There's been companies that have stepped up, and I'm talking about vendors that have helped take this to the next level, right? And I think, as we go forward, cyber resiliency will have to become one of the tools within the cybersecurity backpack. And things like AI will be part of that resiliency.
Well said, well said. Any other comments on this topic, or we'll move to our last one? John, were you about to?
I do have a small example. So I help a small company with their cyber security, and the way how they're set up, and they have sensitive data that they keep on their servers, and they're very careful about that. And the company is such that, and how they do their work, there's no reason for anybody from outside of the company to ever have to access these servers. And so we set up a firewall, and it made it basically impossible to get through the firewall from the outside, just as one of the precautions. And of course, when COVID hit and they had to start having people work from home, that changed the situation for them. And suddenly, we started looking at, well, can we set up VPNs that we feel secure about to access the data that they need to access? And we started looking at, well, what can we do in terms of the activity coming through the firewall? Because we want to make sure that if something gets compromised outside, that's supposed to be protected, we want to make sure that we can detect what's happening. And we looked at more deeply at, well, what sorts of activity would we see and not see? And luckily, a lot of it came down to there were certain pieces of data that should never be accessed that would actually go through the firewall. And so it gave us something to do some searching on and look for and try to detect and block. And that was one of the ways that we started looking at that. And so right now we're looking at the possibility of using a neural network then to further screen that so that we could scale it up.
Excellent, thank you for that. All right, let's put up our last question here. Where do you see the future of cybersecurity headed over the next 5 years? And let's even broaden it. Let's say over the next 5 to 10 years.
We have a hard enough time figuring out the next year for our roadmap. What are you on about? Now you're giving us 10 years. Gee.
I think that cybersecurity is in this issue of catch up right now. We don't have enough people. The adversary, every time a new tool comes out, the adversary figures out a way around it. We have a large, group of users who we have to continuously hound to not make mistakes, because if they click on the wrong thing, we're always playing catch up. And right now, I don't see things happening in cybersecurity that's going to change that. I think for 5 years we're just going to continue down that road. And even with the application of AI, I'm a little concerned that it may help with reducing the need for humans to be looking, for threats. But I think the adversary is always going to be one step ahead, and we almost need to have a very different mindset about this problem. And possibly it may be that going down to fundamentally of using AI tools to start looking at the lowest level of like the activity, the communication stack, for example. Maybe we need to start looking at that as opposed to looking at the upper levels of the TCP/IP stack and trying to decide what activity is good or bad. Start to look more broader in what we can do. But I guess I don't have a lot of hope right now, like for the next 5 years. Even cybersecurity is still trying to just catch up until they step back and look at the bigger problem. It's going to be tough.
So, well, I'll toss this out and just say I think over the next 5 to 10 years, John, to your statement in terms of playing catch up, I think as the new tools come out, as more people get access to machine learning, artificial intelligence, I think we'll see our adversaries beginning to use machine learning and artificial intelligence against us in a couple of different ways. Number one, I think they'll begin to attack our, not necessarily cybersecurity, but they'll begin to attack the training data that we use for our other business functions. And really trying to think about how do we validate that the training data going into some business machine learning was not breached, not compromised, and doesn't allow us to make business mistakes. I really do think that the access to this technology is going to expand that. I think it's also going to drive, over the next 5 to 10 years, we're going to see more and more companies, we're going to see their businesses, their business functions pushing them to move away from the castle model, those that already haven't. And, where, you've got a big wall, deep moat, you don't interconnect with many of your clients in a deep way. You don't interconnect with many of your business associates, business partners, and vendors in a deep way. I think those walls are going to continue to come down. We're going to move more to a data-centric model. I don't want to say zero trust, but we're going to move more. We're going to see more of the average business moving towards a data-centric model, which might help facilitate AI a little bit, and might also create some new challenges.
Yeah, I would agree. I also think that I've been in security way too long on both sides of the equation. And as we get AI, there is open source AI out there too for the attackers, right? As we build algorithms and release them, so they will build their own algorithms. It's the way it's always been, and it's the way it always will be, right? Cryptocurrency was made for X, is now used for Y, right? Money, and it goes through. The thing for me is that we're still, over the next 5 to 10 years, going to have a deficit in people, really qualified security people, right? We're having universities bringing security people out. There are some universities doing a great job of it, who are putting them in their security operations center to monitor the schooling and all that stuff, so they get real live stuff. But some of it is, security is not lateral thinking, it's out of the box thinking. If it's in the box, it's controlled. We don't need security, it's there. Everything's happening outside the box. They're trying to figure out the way into the box. Is the corner the white spot? Is the top easy to open? I'm looking for people who are outside of the box, and AI can help me on that low level to start with. Maybe in 10 years it can go up a level and be my level 3, but my level 1 and level 2-ish can be done by AI, right? As we go forward, things are going to get better or worse. My fear, to be honest with you, is security leaders right now are at a good point in their career. We are lucky that we're being seen as part of the solution. They need to continue this to be part of the solution, because we will fall back down those ranks again, right? We need to be at the same table as the CIO, right? And as the business units. Security is not there to drain money. Security is there to help the company make money. And that's also got to be the part that we show. We have to show strategic priorities of security aligning with the strategic priorities of the company, right? Also, AI will give us, in the future, the ability to operate more effectively and efficiently, right? But out of all of that, it's not going to help unless you understand the culture and people of the organization. Right, you've got to be able to foster security awareness within that, and that's something that's continue way beyond 10-year security awareness, right? And understanding and getting that right will also reduce all the other security issues you can have from well-meaning people doing things wrong, right? And after COVID and everything's going back, security teams are going to have to start looking at their networks and understanding which part of the business decided to go outside of the organization to get something to make sure they could continue working. What regulations did we break, and let's fix that problem because we were outside of the company, right? So over the next 5 years, I see there's going to be a lot of catch up around things that we may have done wrong or did really well, and we now need to actually transfer it back into the organization. So I think both you and John hit on all the topics and the points that are going to happen. 10 years is a long way in security, it's, whew, you know, I didn't even think I'd be in security 10 years.
Excellent. I've got a couple of rapid fire questions I want to toss at the panelists here. You know, just give us your really short off the cuff answer that have come from our audience here. So, what are the skills and credentials necessary, especially those necessary to get into this industry that don't require a college degree or don't require an additional college degree? What are some of the quick skills that those already operating in this industry or that want to get into it could pick up to give them a leg up, either in languages or models, something that they could pick up quickly?
In AI or in security in general?
In AI.
Think out of the box.
Yeah, I mean, you know, trained quite a few folks, both in AI, coming from software development backgrounds. It's fairly straightforward, but you do need to have a basic understanding of some of the you know, underlying software development languages. I would recommend Python is a good one, because there's a lot of the AI parts that are done for you. If you get into the basic languages, then it's a challenge of understanding the data, understanding how to clean it, understanding your results, right? So the ability to, again, think out of the box and understand the domain, that becomes the challenge. That doesn't require a college degree, and if you had one, it wouldn't help you anyway. So you know, the rest of it is just being able to get through the mechanisms of generating this stuff, which, like I said, you know, picking one of the languages that have a lot of this stuff done for you. I threw out Python, but there are others as well. Would be a good place to start.
I definitely agree. Python's a great one, and then maybe looking at some of the common tools for data analysis. There are some great, very short courses. A variety of colleges have, during the pandemic, have started 2 to 3 month courses to allow you to pick up artificial intelligence, machine learning, and data analytics. You know, if you've got a little bit of a background in Python, you can jump into those. They do touch on some linear algebra, but I don't think any of the courses that I saw were trying to give you a master's degree in discrete math or something. Let's jump to the next question here, just really quickly. How do we obtain cybersecurity data to train the ML models? Does anyone know of, you know, available training data that would at least be a starter pack, or is it really handcrafting the training data? Is it really handcrafting the training data from your network from the ground up?
So my perspective there is a lot of IOCs out there, right? Indicators of compromise out there. And that's the important things to hit, right? Getting those together, you can put some stuff together. The other side of it is that you want it to know your environment, right? So it's very important about your environment. And let's be honest, your environment's not clean, right? You know it's not clean. So you have to look at that data really clearly, that what you're giving it. And you know, just take time. It's all about time.
Excellent.
The closer your training data is to the actual situation that you're trying to solve, it becomes very important. Because if you have data, even data from a year ago, your activity could be different, could have changed on your network. So you almost are in a situation where, if you get the tool, you basically put the tool on your network and flip the switch to training and train on the data that's just passing through the system. And then you got to start to worry about, am I getting good, is this good data coming through? And then you then have to, you can then switch it from training to monitoring and see how that works. If my concern about having like a library of training data is that that library could get old very fast. And you have to find, you have to have that data come from something that's very similar to what it is you're trying to monitor. If you have data that you collected for a large corporation, it's not going to help mom and pop, soda shop place with their one server and 3 three workstations. So you do need you're almost better off collecting the data from your problem area and then look at it, clean it if you need to, and then use that, turn that into the training data.
Yeah, I have something to add on in this cybersecurity data. So one of the most important things is tagging the target variable for the NLP. So because of the traffic size by the existing models, so it is hard to tag it. So be careful when you decide the tagging rules to decide what's the target variables for this ML model. It's most important.
Thank you all so much. I think we'll wrap at this point. I want to thank all my fellow panelists. What a great discussion. I wish we could have gone on for another hour or so. This was a really, really good discussion, and I appreciate all of your input. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you, Mike.
Thank you for everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, everyone. And thank you to the audience for joining and asking questions. And a special thank you to Mike, our moderator, for doing such a wonderful job. That was awesome. And I know the audience is giving you a huge virtual round of applause.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you all so much for joining us. Stay tuned for more AI content coming soon. And we'll look forward to seeing you around. Have a wonderful day. And thank you again.
Thank you, everybody.
Thanks, everyone. Take care.
Thank you, everyone.